What's next? That's the question I have to ask is, what's next? Who's next? I hope they find the right guy, and I hope they find a guy that's willing to rebuild the organization from the ground up.
Yesterday, AJ and I covered the Chicago White Sox snapping the epic losing streak at 21 games, and we made a promise that we wouldn't talk about them for the most part for a while unless the record for most losses came up, because it's an irrelevant team. They're not in the playoffs and the whole deal. And then what do? They finally make the announcement that everyone was waiting for a while now. I forgot about that. That little thing. New manager. Pedro Grifol out. Grady Sizemore in for the interim. I'll let you start, Cam, since AJ and I have spent most of our lives this week talking about this ball club.
Yeah, I think this is a move that we all have been waiting for. I think it's a move that we all knew was coming. And we talked about it my last time on the show, AJ and myself. You know, I don't think there were many guys out there that could have did much with what Pedro Grifol was given. I mean, the roster, the way it was constructed, all of the talk surrounding the season, all of the distractions surrounding the season, not knowing what they're going to do, what direction they're going in. I think this is no surprise to anybody. I think the biggest surprise is how long it took. But for me, as we talked about off air, is at some point, and I think this is the power you have when you are the owner, you know, I think we have to look at ownership. You know, AJ talked about it, 43 plus years and only 3 playoff series wins. And that says a lot. And I think you have to start to look in the mirror ownership and go, who have we put in place? Have I been open to actually hearing other people's opinions and advice on what possibly could make this organization better? And that's where I am today. So it's something that doesn't surprise me, but here we are talking about the White Sox again.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get at least a day or two off without having to talk about this team, but here we are again. And I mean, listen, I don't know. I mean, you never want to see anybody lose their job. But when you're 28 and 89, it's hard to justify keeping anybody around. It's not a happy day if you're a White Sox fan. I mean, a lot of people are celebrating because he's gone, but what's next? That's the question I have to ask is, what's next? Who's next? I know they hired Grady Sizemore as their interim guy, but is he the answer? Is he the long-term answer? I don't know. I hope they find the right guy, and I hope they find a guy that's willing to rebuild the organization from the ground up. Now, that's going to start with Jerry Reinsdorf. That's going to start with Chris Getz. That's going to start with the people at the top. But they haven't made a lot of changes, like Cam said, over the years. So we'll see how it happens. But as a White Sox fan, I mean, I hope they get the decision right. And, oh, yeah, by the way, guys, my phone works. My phone works. I take phone calls.
So you do want to take a phone call about how to fix them?
I mean, I would love to figure out how to fix them. I mean, I'm a White Sox fan, but
absolutely,
I mean, I'd love to be some. Listen, I would love. I've asked Jerry Reinsdorf many times to let me help this organization, and he has never ever let me try to do it. So maybe one day, maybe this is the time where I actually do get that phone call.
Okay, so I know you love role play. If you get that phone call and he says, "What's your pitch? What are you doing? What are you fixing? What are you saying?"
Everything. We're starting over. Everything. You know what we need to do? You know what you need to do? Honestly, you need to be, and this is what we say about like the Rockies, right? And what the Rays did. You got to find some way to get outside of what everyone else is doing. The Rays have gotten outside kind of what everyone else is doing, and now everybody wants a piece of that. You have to be the next organization. I know they made a crappy movie about Moneyball, but they were the first organization to really embrace analytics, right? So what can you do as an organization to get outside and in front of everything that everybody else is doing? You have to figure that out and then start from the ground up and build your organization to a point where you can be a consistent winner. And it just has not happened in Chicago for a long time.
Okay. And just to put a bow on Grifol, it's not just the losing. There were a lot of storylines coming out of there. I know that losing contributes to that to an extent, but I don't know. I think there was enough coming out of that clubhouse over, especially last year, but even a little bit this year, where you're like, hey, this is a guy that's not going to be here for the other side, right? In addition to the fact that, you know, Chris Getz is the GM of the team, and this was not his selection for manager.
Mm-mm. Do not let that be said. He had input. He will not admit it, but trust me, I've talked to enough people inside the organization that him and Pedro were they came from the Royals together. They worked in the minor leagues for the Royals. Now listen, I'm not saying, no, listen, ultimately Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams made the decision, but there were people that have told me, numerous people from the organization that said that Chris Getz was pushing for Pedro Grifol to be the manager.
Why?
Because he thought they all thought he'd be great. They all thought he would be great. And listen,
After
maybe he interviews great. I don't know. I don't know that answer. I'm not in that room, but I'm just telling you, I've heard from the time he was hired to the time now that many people have called me that were inside that organization that have said Getz, Rick, Kenny, all of them were in on Pedro Grifol being the manager.
Big shout out to America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh, for helping us eat good during this busy time of the year for us. With HelloFresh, you get pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. It's home cooking made easy, fun, and affordable.
HelloFresh makes it easy, even for picky eaters like Scott. There's a changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week. Customize it to fit your taste. There's protein and veggie swap options too. The recipes are easy to follow. Just choose your delivery day, open your box, cook, and eat.
My house is busy with sports, but family dinners are important. My fam eats better, healthier, and we cook so much easier with HelloFresh.
And for a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/FTKids to unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/FTKids. I mean, seeing what we saw last year and what we heard last year, including from some pretty legit vets, I would have been like, that's the first thing we're doing. Let's get a new leader of the clubhouse. But okay, well.
I don't know.
Now,
again, I wasn't in there, and I don't know. Maybe Pedro. They all said Pedro blew him away in the interview process. Maybe he did. Maybe he's a great interview guy when he get him inside that room. I don't know, but I'm just telling you things I've heard for almost 2 years now.
Blew him away in the interview process, but then he got the job last year, and it was not done well. I mean, the results weren't there on the field, and there was turmoil behind the scenes. I think that was obvious.
Yeah, again, but that's not how you get hired. You don't see that when you get hired. It's after you're hired that you see stuff.
But I'm saying after last season, they could have just said, hey, let's start fresh right here.
They're not. They had to give him another year. Jerry's not going to eat. Jerry Reinsdorf.
Yeah, it was. I think it was too much of a mess for them to not give him another year. Mm-hmm. But they're in shambles again. There's no leadership. I think Pedro Grifol, at the end of the day, as a manager, you have to have somebody you can rely and trust on as far as a player that you can go to try to help you rally the troops. And right now, they just don't have that. AJ talked about it last time. I love Andrew Benintendi, but he's not that vocal guy. He's not a guy who I see, closing the doors and saying, hey, guys, we as players, we've got to do something better. I don't know. Maybe he is, but they don't seem to have that type of veteran leadership. And now you look at all of the guys that they lost, all of the veterans that they did have. There's a lot of just dysfunction going on in that organization. And I think, like AJ said, it's going to have to be a start from the bottom, and we have a long way to go. Fans, get ready. It's going to be a long rebuilding process. But for me, it starts with the manager, and I hope Grady Sizemore, he's interim, but they have to find somebody, and I'll use the Angels as an example. Look at what Ryan Washington is doing right now. Even with the injuries that they have, they've had a pretty great second half. They've been playing extremely competitive, and right now they're playing spoilers, but because they have a guy that they show up to the field for every day and they want to play hard for him, you got to go find that guy, and that's where it starts.
And there's a great clip. We did about 15 minutes on this topic. If you want to look later, a little extra YouTube clip with AJ and Kratz and myself. Lastly, do you guys know Sizemore, like on the coaching side? Obviously, I think you both probably played against him.
I played with him.
You played with him?
I played with him.
Yeah, I played against, yeah.
He's a great guy. Listen, but I mean, they're talking about they want this or they want that. This opens, by hiring him as the interim, this opens it up to all kinds of candidates to be the next manager because he doesn't really have a lot of coaching experience. I mean, he was a complex league coach. I think last year he was I don't even know what his role was. He was kind of just a do-everything coach this year for the White Sox. So this opens it up to a lot of people because, they said, oh, we don't want a guy with no experience. Well, they just hired a guy with no experience. So that opens up to a lot of people.
Okay. We'll see how he does. Got a month and a half to spice things up. The bar's pretty low on the win-loss situation. So, if they win a few games in a row, there's going to be parades. We'll see.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.